welcome to another episode of Ideaprov. I'm here today to talk about, some music, and I thought I'd bring in some musically inclined folks. So we have Andre and Alex here. I met Andre through work, which was a great time. Always a good character in the hallways to chat and meet with. And he introduced me to his brother, which apparently is very similar to myself. So we're expecting to have a whole lot of fun today. So how are we doing, guys? What's going on?
I'm good, man. Just living it up. Day quarantine of day 90? 100?
Day 90. I don't even know.
I've been marking the wall in my garage like it's a prison sentence. So I'll go back and check that.
Totally understand. So what we really wanted to talk about today was the concept of music, right? And how music has always been known to kind of light up different parts of the brain for people. It's been known to bring people out of comas. It's been known to just elevate the human experience, right? And so there's a whole different element to it that most people neglect to try and, tap into. There's a lot of artists out there, whether it be, musicians at home or whatever. And so when it's something that's so kind of life-changing, how can we get more people to make music, sing, and just kind of get out of their heads and, just bring that craft to the world, right? Because you got to think, it's one of those common things that's been in human history for forever. So why don't we share it more often? There's so many people out there that just don't want to. So my first inclination of why this is an issue is, of course, insecurity, right? People just are afraid people are going to say that their stuff is trash or they have a horrible voice or whatever the case may be. But there's so many, shows, whether it's The Voice or whatever, that are all based around singing. So why don't more people just do it and stop judging themselves?
And do you want to rock, paper, scissors? Who's going to go first?
It's free for all.
Well, I don't know. A lot of it is probably fear of judgment from other people. So it's not only them judging themselves. I think people are more concerned about, I don't want to make that generalization, but a lot of people are concerned about how other people will perceive them. And I think they might feel that their value is based off of someone else's opinion when their value should be based off of their own opinion. What you think about yourself is more important than what other people think about you. And it's that, and if you're just doing something, especially if you're in front of people, that's just, that's like public speaking times 10. Because most people can publicly speak, they can talk in front of crowds, but then you have to sing, so it's you're demonstrating a skill in front of people. And that's a whole new layer of I need a new pair of underwear before I go up on stage, or before I because you're about ready to shit your pants. And, there's... Oh, sorry. Am I not allowed to curse on here? You can bleep that out.
No, you can go ahead.
We actually already...
we can change it to explicit.
I said we should blur...
change the format of this podcast real fast.
We should bleep out our curse words like epic mealtime. That's what I recommended, because I think that's really good.
Yeah, but it can't be just a bleep. It's got to be a different sound. Maybe it's the sound of your piss that you took earlier.
Yeah.
Or a bird,
a megaphone.
We'll figure it out.
But
Mike, we'll connect on that.
Yeah. But that's my 2 cents.
But
now, do you mean getting people to do it in general, or do it with other in front of people? Does that make sense?
Well, I think it's both, right? So I think there's a confidence level that has to be, in order to be able to do it in front of other people, right? You have to have some type of confidence in yourself to say, I think I'm decent and I can put it in front of other people. I think there's also an element of people in their homes, or just in the safety of their homes, just trying it, being okay to fail. So having that first and say, hey, I can do this well enough in my home to be able to do it in front of maybe my spouse or my kids or, grandma and grandpa. They're always going to love it, mom or dad. And then there's a different aspect of putting it out to the world. So, of course, I want to talk about first, why don't more people just play musical instruments? Because I think that's a huge lost kind of art. I mean, me, myself, I played a little piano. I played percussion for a little bit. Never did any wind instruments, but, I knew how to read music. My family was always very musically inclined. I grew up in the islands, so it's like that drum beat is a constant thing in like all of our music, whether it was calypso, soca, reggae, all that kind of stuff. And as I got older, I definitely jumped into more, like hip hop. And then I listened to, the other day I was geeking out to some of the Eurovision tracks from 2020. And so my musical variety is all over the place, and I take a little bit of inspiration. I haven't played in a long time, but it's one of the things that I kind of want to start getting back into. But I think for me, it really helped, focus my energy a little bit and kind of got me comfortable with being uncomfortable about doing things that I might not be good at, just practice, right? And so it's usually one of the things that gets cut. And so that's why I want to talk with you guys, because I know Andre plays a little music, and I'm assuming, with you guys' background, you got to be some musically inclined somewhere,
So, ironically enough, I don't think I really got too much into our background with you, Mike, but so I think, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Alex, but we grew up in a very musically inclined household for the most part. Both of my parents were not shy about singing. They enjoyed music. I mean, when we were little kids, we grew up listening to CDs and records, and if something new came out and it was catchy or my dad liked it, it got bought and it was played. That music was probably the one thing my parents were good about, sparing no expense. I remember going to, my first concert was, they took us to Anita Baker on New Year's Eve when I was 6. Yeah, 5 or 6. So, I'm barely awake. We went as a family. Yeah, it was really good. But that was a household we were in. They were very good about singing, and I think I pretty much got into it because of Alex. Alex signed up for chorus in, 4th grade, and I couldn't ride my bike home by myself, so I would sit and wait with Alex, and then it turned into me reading music with him, and then me singing in a chorus along with him, and then our oldest brother played saxophone in middle school, which turned into, when we hit middle school, we played saxophone. So Alex played saxophone, I think, longer than I did. He played for 2 or 3 years, right?
It was a little longer than that. It was close to 4. It's about 4 years.
Yeah, played for a year, and then I joined chorus, because chorus was just kind of what seemed to click with me best. And then Alex had always been really good about Alex is the type of person that can just figure stuff out. If it's a random thing, if it's a skateboard, Alex will figure out a skateboard. Surfing, Alex would pick up a surfboard and get out there, and he's would pick it up right away. It's just, he's very, very inclined like that. So Alex learned drums, and then I had a friend that had basically kind of convinced me to play guitar, and I wanted to learn how. So Alex and I actually had a band when we were in college for a couple years. And we weren't great or anything, but we got up and we played, and we would, we wrote music and we played together, and it was really helpful that you had, for one, somebody to bounce music off of in your house. Makes it really easy. And 2, when you have a drummer and a guitarist, you more or less can have a band. The White Stripes exist.
Yeah.
And that's all they are. So that was pretty much us. We'd sit down and we'd write stuff, or we'd go, hey, how does this sound? And we would give this input. Or I can't drum, but I would say what if you did I'd try and do my best to mouth through what I think a drum should sound like. And,
those are always really good too.
Really good
He's no, do dak. And I'm and I think I do it, and they just no, that's not what I'm trying to. And it would be 10 minutes of me him trying to mouth a fill on the drums. It was just. But really
we
funny.
Always figured it out. But you get what I mean? You kind of learn to groove off each other and figure it out, and this is through college we played, and I think for us, we were a little comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And I think it's because we had that level of encouragement. Where like, when I was learning guitar, I sucked. But when Alex was relearning drums, he also kind of sucked. So as we were progressing together, Alex could figure out how to do a drum fill of something, and I'd go, oh, that sounds like this. And then I would try and play a guitar part over it, and then that's kind of how we would get better. I'm also pretty sure that there was a point where my parents were ready to like just burn the house down so they wouldn't have to hear just any more.
Smother me in my sleep one night, you know?
Yeah. I think that's every parent. I mean, like my parents like loved, there was always like, we used to call it like Soca Saturdays, right? So we'd get up and everybody would like clean like their room and a part of the house, and it was just kind of our normal thing. We'd turn on music and blast it across the house, and sometimes it would be soca in the morning, and then other times it would be random stuff. It'd be like 50s tunes, you know, or 60s, or of course my parents, you know, their heyday was the 70s, so they would, you know, bring out like Earth, Wind and Fire and all the rest of them, and it was really, you know, kind of good, engaging type stuff. We'd sing along and do, you know, all those kinds of things, but like I always kind of got to, maybe I was just one of the lucky ones that was able to partake in that on a consistent basis, and that led me to be more musically inclined. And then there's some people that just didn't. So I was thinking, is it just that family unit that needs to instill it early, or can you learn it later?
Well, I think you brought up a really good point, right? I think there's a lot of it's normalizing it, right? So it's not, I guess, thinking from a background perspective, it doesn't really matter, I guess, where you get it. And I say that because, so our guitarist, when we were in a band, our guitarist Danny, his mom was not like a musical person. Like, I think she played music because it was just noise in the background. But there was nothing about, like, Danny's mom was like, oh man, I can't wait to go get the new whatever album came out today. But Danny's mom was really into religion and church. So they went to church. Danny was interested in music, so Danny learned to play music because he was in the church band. Like, that's, you know what I mean? So I don't think he got into music until he was probably, like, it's still young, but call it 7, 8, 9, right? But I don't think he was particularly in a musical household. He ended up going to a place, and I think there was that level of inclusion, right? I can't imagine any church saying like, oh, you want to learn an instrument? That's done, go sit down, right? They're probably like very inclusive. Hey, no, come on in, you know, absolutely, we'll show you, here's what we're doing, and welcome, everybody's welcome, right? So I think it all starts with normalizing it, right? Something that just says like, you know, it's okay to come up here and sound stupid and maybe you suck, but at least, you know, there's that comfort in knowing that you're not going to be so badly judged for it. Like, if I were to imagine, like, I suck at sports. Like, I'm pretty sure after my first year of playing baseball, like, my coach probably walked up to my parents and said, hey, you should maybe think about getting him, like, a piano. But again, it was something that, like, I knew I wasn't good at it, and I got a lot of discouragement from it because I wasn't very good at it. And I think because it was a team sport, it was also kind of like, hey, you're bringing us all down. So I found something that I was better at, which was music, right? But I think, right, you have those interactions, and like, I don't get me wrong, I love baseball, but I will not ever play like on a travel team because I'm not good at it, but I know that, right? So if I know it's a fun league or something like that, like I'll be a little more open to it. So again, I think it's right that inclusion, something that you're explaining or letting somebody know, like, it's not that serious, it's something that's for fun, you know, like karaoke.
Yeah. Karaoke is a good start. I always forget about that.
And you know what the best part about karaoke is? There's usually alcohol involved. And that always helps, like, just a little bit.
Maybe that's what you need to do to get everybody to start playing more music. Just get them hammered and start throwing instruments at them.
Get the whole world drunk, throw instruments, and make it happen.
Yeah. So, but I mean, there was a lot there. So, like, kind of what you're getting at, it's a combination of exposure, parenting to a certain degree, like being okay with, like, letting your kids know that it's okay to suck. You know, be like, hey, you're not going to be good at this, and that's all right. You know, just try to enjoy it for what it is, and then a personal interest in whatever that music is. and depending on like the environment you're in. So like, you know, when I joined band, it was like our first day of band in like the 6th grade, and I got a saxophone. We sounded terrible as a unit. Like everybody sucked. There was like only maybe 1 or 2 kids that already knew how to play an instrument, and the rest of us, it was just noise. But you got to be okay. Then even if you're embarrassed, you got to look around and be like, everybody else is just as bad as I am. It's like going to a club and nobody knows how to dance. You know what I mean? Then you're not going to feel as bad going out there, but like, oh, who cares? Look at the rest of these rejects. And then you're like, I'm going to fit right in. Worst case scenario, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that has a lot to do with it. It's having the interest, having the courage to do something in front of people that they're uncomfortable with, or, you know, like doing something they're uncomfortable. And then on top of that, being okay with like looking kind of dumb. You know, you kind of have to have no shame, sort of, to like get going, to not get discouraged when you're doing something new.
But I think that's like a desensitizing thing. Like when you do something enough times, like it's that level of inclusion. If somebody, like, if I see somebody that's dancing terribly and they're like, "Come on in, man, come have a good time," and you're like, "Well, they look terrible," and they're okay with being uncomfortable and being ridiculous. Like you're more inclined to jump in and like do something silly or stupid or try to, right?
Yeah.
So maybe everybody has to start with like a Weird Al song.
And it's funny because it's like all those parameters. Weird Al song would be a good start. Is those weird parameters, right? Because I didn't realize how much the silliness would be a factor, right? Like, so sing word kids, do stuff, you know, you're dancing around the house. I think that's normal, and a lot of, I guess maybe you could say normal sometimes, yes or no. But I can't remember how many like thousands of little beats or dances that me, my brother, my dad, my uncles, you know, sometimes my mom would make and or create with random objects and make it like an instantaneous dance party. So, you know, everybody has songs in their heads, right? And so I remember, you know, my brother would come and he would have like a wooden spoon or whatever, and he'd be stirring the pot, and he'd just start tapping on the top of the pot. And then somebody else would grab a piece of glass, or like my dad would grab his glass, and with his wedding ring, he would make the next, tunes on the glass. And of course, then I grab, you know, a little piece of like a flexible cutting board, and I'm adding like the melody or something like that. And next thing you know, we have like a full-blown dance party in the kitchen for no reason. You know, it's stupid, it's ridiculous. It makes a lot of sense, though. The music's
not that
great.
dumb. Yeah, have you heard of Stomp? You missed it. You missed your big break.
Oh, yeah. We could have made millions.
But look, like you guys made a game out of it. You made something that became fun. Like, and I think that's what makes a big difference. You know, so Shannon, my wife, I know you guys know her, but my wife Shannon has played piano since she was 3. Like, think about that. Like, I'm at 3 years old, I'm pretty sure that I still was not mastering the toilet, but Shannon was already learning piano. Because she just, music and her brain just work. Like, it makes sense. I mean, she's, I talked to her about that the other day, as you know, you mentioned this topic, and we got a conversation about it, and I said, you know, how serious or how like intricate were the pieces you were playing when you were a kid? And she said, well, when I was 7 or 8, I was playing like, you know, 18-page pieces for recitals, and she hated playing in front of people, and she hated playing, I think, because it became work for her. So to put it in perspective, you know, she's like, oh, I was playing these 18-page things, and I'm like, okay, well, what's solfeggiato? Which is a song that I know that she plays, and she could be blindfolded and play that song beginning to end on piano, and she's like, oh, that's about 3 pages. So to think that she memorized something that's 18 pages as such a young kid is insane to me. But also, I think those memories for her, like, she hears some songs and they may have like some like happy memories of like, this song reminds her of her grandma, or she likes this or something. But for the most part, I think a lot of it is like, when she gets the idea of playing in front of people, her experience is like, oh, it was terrible. Like, this was like a job. I was a 7 or 8 year old kid who sat down and
Yeah.
Exactly. I had to play these pieces in front of these families and all these people, and she's like, every single time I had to do this, despite the fact that she did it over and over and over and over and over again, was an uncomfortable like experience for her.
Yeah.
Like, with the exception of playing in front of like her mom or a few of us, it's hard for her, right? So, and she's a freaking prodigy. Like, if I could play kazoo as well as she plays the piano, like, I'd be a YouTube star. I don't know.
Or maybe like a recorder. That'd be pretty sweet.
Actually, that would be. I wouldn't.
They have a whole commercial with that now, like a Facebook group, and it's like they all play the recorder and like find your group or whatever it is.
Oh, the kazoo! Oh yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. But that's my point, right? She's somebody who's gone through the experience of like music's introduced at a young age as a child. She has some very positive memories of piano. It's something that invokes and brings up good memories for her. I would imagine it's probably helped her quite a bit through her life from a learning and educational perspective. She's very smart. She got a master's degree. But the idea of playing in front of people, I think, will instantly make her like just have knots in her stomach. It's just something that hasn't gone away for her.
Well, that's almost, at this point, it's you got to think about, like, just from a purely behavioral, because all right, so I took a couple of behavioral analysis classes when I was an undergrad a long time ago, and it was basically, it's like training a mouse to like, pick up this marble and put it over here, and then you get fed or whatever. But the thing that's interesting is a lot of these principles actually carry over to people and their subconscious behavior. And you got to think about what it is she's constantly associating something that, maybe she might enjoy, but she's turning something that she enjoys into something that's stressful. You're like, this is invoking stress and this is a bad experience, and it's a repeated exposure over and over and over and over again. So now whenever you think about playing the piano, even if you're not consciously thinking about like, oh, okay, no big deal, I'm just playing the piano, it might be at the same time like, I don't know if I want to do that, because you've already associated it with something negative. You know what I mean? There might be something to that.
Do you think that that's possible to be rewired? I mean, I'm sure it is, probably with enough time and exposure. Now, would you particularly want to go about doing that? I feel like that'd be a daunting task.
Mike, I was just thinking about that because, we've got a 7-month-old, and that's something that like, this kid is going to end up in a musical household. Like, Shannon and I we listen to a ton of music. Like, I play him records all the time. Like, he gets lulled to sleep to 1 or 2 songs I know he likes. And it's funny because songs come on, you can tell they pique his interest. So it's like, I feel like he gets it. He understands that there's something about it he's interested in. And I'm pretty sure that Shannon would do anything for this kid, right? There's no doubt in my mind, right? So I think that if there's a way to program like a happy thought to it, right? We have a piano, like, hey, why don't you play him some songs on piano? And if she starts getting a good reaction out of him, I think that's something where she would be more inclined of like, if he came home one day and said like, hey mom, I want you to play piano for my friends, she'd probably feel less stressed out about it because now it's got a positive sentiment to it, I guess. I feel like there might be a way to my first thought was like,
just make it fun. Just try to make it fun again.
Yeah, like find a way to rewrite those memories to associate them with positive thoughts.
Yeah. Well, my first thought was like easing, right? So I think what made so I've always I jokingly say I'm like an ambivert because I'm good when I speak in a small group of people, but once that like 5th or 6th person walks in the group, I'm like, oh god, right? You get a little clammy. And that's of course like just exemplified when we would play. On a positive note, never thought I'd ever say this, but the good part about like nobody ever coming to see us play, other than like a handful of people that we already know who've already seen us play, is that you become a little more comfortable in that group, right? So I almost feel like we had like eased exposure into playing in front of people. So like, Alex and I would play inside the garage, and then like it would be us playing with the rest of the band, and then it'd be like Shannon, and then like later it'd be like Shannon and Shannon's friend, or it'd be like us and then like our girlfriends are watching, or like some family, right? So it's that like eased in of like, okay, we're playing for people, but now we're playing for 10 people, but it's 10 people so it's almost like I would have to mentally tell myself sometimes when we would go play, hey, we may be playing for like 15 people, but that's only like a couple more people than we've already played for, like in the garage, right? And then 10 of these people are the people who would already be in the garage watching us, so what does it make a difference? And then also, I would have like 2.5 beers before we would play. But
2.5 keg stands.
You're going to find that sweet spot.
No, but it had to be no more
somewhere between that.
Because if it was, if it was less than 2.5 beers, I was still a little nervous. But if it was more than 2.5 beers, I didn't care about how sloppily I played.
Yeah.
Right. And
it's amazing that the bar was only 2.5 beers. I can't remember his name. I think it's like something Schwartz, where he's talking about like Motley Crue. They're drinking like heroin out of a fire hose, and he's like, "Oh, I had like 20 beers," and you're only having like 2.5 beers.
It like takes you 2.5 to get warmed up.
It was perfect. It was that right balance, and then it was like bowling. Bowling's the same way for you. 2.5 beers, right? If I drink too much, it starts getting sloppy. Form slips, right?
I should research on that. It's true.
I'm kind of mad that he knows the exact amount at which it tips over.
Well, it's not like literally 2.5 beers, but alcohol can improve your performance depending on like hand-eye coordination.
I have no doubt about it.
Stuff,
I mean, I played volleyball with a guy who, if we went on the court straight first thing in the morning or during any game, he was so nervous that he couldn't set the ball. They would call his hands all the time, and he would just get flustered, right? And so he just couldn't do it. And so we were like, how do we get this done? Like, we need this guy to play well. We'd light him up with about 2 to 3 beers before the game. Sometimes we're playing first matches at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. Like, doesn't matter. We're picking up a 6-pack. You're letting it 2 or 3. As soon as he hit like his beginning part of his 3rd beer, the man's hands were golden.
Well, now you have stuff like
I don't know. Like, he calms his nerves and he just goes. So alcohol is easily a quality lubricant to be able to make people smooth.
And you find your balance, right? Because at the time when we would play, granted, this is probably I don't know, more than 10 years ago now, 10, 12 years ago. So I don't know. I only weighed 135, 140 pounds. So like 2.5 beers is like, that's like shooting a bear with a tranquilizer. I was like, I'd be like, all right, let's get out there and do this, But you have to be kind of half refined because I play rhythm guitar, Alex is on drums, right? So you just like bass, right? You all kind of feed off of each other. That like lead's the only one I think that could just, no matter what's going on, is like, I can find a way to squeeze this in. Like if Alex screws up on drums, you hear that, right? You're off. And then same thing with guitar. Alex is like, did we miss it? It's like, did we skip a part? And right, because you all try to play off each other.
Oh my god!
Figure it out. So
I would always like lose count too. That would drive me crazy. I'm like, where's 1? I'm trying to find like where's the start? Like I would just get lost, and then Andy would always be like, he's like, just watch me. I'll tell you. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Because otherwise, I would just keep playing.
We got way
more.
I would have
just
after time. We got so much more refined though, because after a while, it became like you and Chris were machines. So Chris is our bass player, and Chris and Alex would be like anything that was going on in the song. Chris would turn to Alex, and literally they would just like look at each other, and they would figure it out, and they'd have the spot, right? So then we would have to figure out like they would keep us on.
Good at like the groove.
Yeah. So those two were pretty much like, they were the ones that were really tight, and then me and the other guitarist were like, okay, if we've screwed up, we have to get back on where they are, because it's the only way the song is going to not sound like we're 2 different bands up here playing, or like
just kind of merge together.
Yeah. Don't want them thinking I had 3 beers.
Heaven forbid. Now, do you think that we could? Like, I'm just trying to think it. All right, if I am John Doe, right, and I play guitar, sing, whatever the case is, do you think that I could potentially play in front of people if I didn't see them?
Oh yeah, I mean,
If you
I
couldn't
would
see them?
Like, yeah, if I couldn't see them, like, so for example, you maybe just a garage band or something like that. Like, I mean, this is just a crazy hypothetical situation, right? So if you know that you're going to be playing in front of this massive amount of people, that's when the anxiety comes, that's when the stress level comes and throws you for a loop. You clam up, you don't want to do that. You create those negative experiences, right? So to get people from not being shy, I could say, hey, if they potentially don't know that they are playing in front of a large amount of people, could it work?
I would think it
Like,
could work.
for example, could you lie to somebody and be like, hey, I just need you to play a song. It's, for my grandma. It's, I don't know, something's happened to her, and that's what it is. You think you just play one song? But okay, yeah, fine. And then like take them to a super large event and just have them play blindfolded.
So you're like, well, I was thinking more like,
I think
Traumatic experience, yes. Find out.
well, I was thinking more like you have a person playing, you got like the curtain, right? You don't realize what's behind the curtain. I would think that would work, but I also think the moment that person realizes they played in front of a dozen people, like they're going to be in therapy for a long time.
Yeah.
I think people have already kind of found a workaround to that. I mean, you got to think about, like, you play something and you put it on YouTube, right? I mean, you're technically putting that in front of, I don't know, however many people will watch it. I mean, it's not performing right in front of them, but what you are doing is you're putting something that you are potentially self-conscious about, and you're kind of putting that out in the world. And I know people do that sometimes, or like live stream type of things, and you don't know how many people are watching. That can also be an option, especially now since we're all going to be stuck in our homes until we die because of COVID. That's like the only way to communicate with each other anymore.
So we die.
Alex, I think you brought up a really
I'm just kidding. Everything's going to work out.
I feel like you have to be more brazen to put your stuff up on YouTube, right? Because I think, anybody can view it, which is awesome, right? And you don't have to play in front of someone. You're posting it somewhere and they're seeing it later. I think that's awesome. But I also think that people on the internet have no souls. Like when they sit down behind that,
they will rip you a new
behind the
one.
keyboard, right? If you play in front of a group of 10 people, like if let's say you really sucked, you may have like one person who comes up to you who's your friend who's like, hey man, that wasn't that great, but hey, good job trying, right? You might get that like compliment sandwich. When you get on YouTube,
the shit sandwich.
Give an example of what people would say. but let's just say that people will start telling you they hope that your family dies of diseases and etc.
It's so true.
Terrible
It's so
things
true.
that they'll say because it's anonymous.
Yeah. You gotta.
Yeah.
Well, that'll thicken up your skin really quick, and then you're like, oh, performing in front of people that will. They only see the performance once. It doesn't stay on the internet and just accumulate more hate. It could just be like a one and done. That. If you do it the other way around, that's actually, you'll probably figure out like, oh, this is a way better option. Just perform in front of people and get it over with.
It's like they see you one time and done. It's not up there for like eternity.
Like if you leave it up there for years, I mean, like imagine the hate snowball that comes from that.
Oh my god. I'm dying right now.
I can only imagine. How shitty that is.
I mean, in a weird backhanded sort of way, that actually makes a lot of sense because you gotta think about it. Like, if I'm just trying to build something and I put it out on like for everybody to see on YouTube, if they tear me up, going in front of an audience is gonna seem like nothing.
That's very true.
It's gonna seem like nothing.
If you can manage to not hate yourself enough to go and play in front of people like that, you will probably do very, very well. I think live.
Yeah, if you believe in yourself after that.
You should run for president. Because, man, you got all the confidence in the world.
Yeah, clearly.
I think Alex, you brought up a really, really good option, like doing a stream. Like, so I don't know if either of you two read Reddit, but it's also a place where the internet's Facebook toilet. But it has a lot of very interesting articles and things. But right now they've been doing that where you can do like it's like live streaming and right, people are playing for strangers, right? I mean, it's anonymous. Like I feel like putting it up on Facebook or like Instagram is almost a little more there's more vulnerability, right? Because you know these people, you know it's somebody that like you may have to see again, right? It could be like your boss. Like you can go on and put up like a guitar video and your boss will walk up to me like, hey man, I saw your Facebook Live, it sucked, right? And that's probably gonna hurt you. That's probably gonna burn a bit. And like you mentioned, right, like YouTube, it's now on there for eternity or until you have self-deprecation or hate yourself enough to delete it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in like Reddit right now,
but even then, it doesn't mean it's gone. You'll find that video in like 5 other places in the internet.
That's right.
Like 3 subreddits.
If you live stream though in a Reddit, maybe like it could, maybe that's a good option. You start out, you try it out, if nobody watches it, then like, okay, maybe 2 people watch it, and hopefully nobody says something super terrible.
Yeah, you get a thumbs up, and you don't get like a little poop thing that like, like during live streams they have all this.
Yeah.
I don't live stream often, so I don't know what all those are called, but
get a little karma.
There you go, thank you.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I thought that would kind of be the best of both worlds, right, is talk about live streaming, posting it online. If I did that, I'm just like, hey, I'm going to sing whatever, like sing, post it. But then I know this is probably going to be extremely difficult, but like, don't look at the reviews. You know what I mean? Yeah, like you can kind of cut it off at the source and be like, disable the reviews, disable the comments, and you'll just have your stuff out there. Now, do I think that's massively going to help you, like, get over your feeling and get more people to play? Some people, yes. I'm going to say most people, no. It's just going to be a video up there of some random person singing that nobody's going to be able to tear you to shreds from.
Well, maybe, I don't know. I look at people and, humans we're all social creatures. And I think maybe getting people to have a sense of community, like the only reason I continued to play music is because we were in a garage band and we were playing music and it was fun. You know what I mean? So even if we sucked, but we were having fun. And I think that's probably a big element.
Some days were not fun.
Finding a community of
days
people.
Were a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if it wasn't fun, it was still way more fun than a lot of the other things that I did regularly. You know what I mean? And I think if you end up getting, like, if you want somebody to pick up an instrument or somebody has an interest in music, finding a welcoming community of people that you can play music with or have those type of exchanges. So I see a lot of people online, like you're trying to learn how to play the guitar, for instance, and you're just kind of sitting in your room by yourself and you're like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere with it. But if you're around other people that are like willing to show you or exchange ideas, you can listen to how somebody else is. You take a little bit from all these other people in an environment that's like really conducive to learning too. And that's what kind of keeps people going. It's like they're not only playing because they enjoy to play, but they kind of have an end game. They're like, oh, I just go to these jam sessions once every couple of weeks with a couple of other friends that have guitars, and we play and we sing or do whatever. And that kind of gives you a goal. So you're like practicing because you want to play some good music, but when you're, I don't know if you've ever been in a band, Mike, but like sometimes you almost kind of get into a state of flow, sort of, to where you're just playing the music and you're not thinking about anything else. You're just enjoying the music. Half the time you're not even thinking about the music you're playing. You're just moving. You're just kind of, you're like on a wave and you're just going. And that's a really cool state.
That's a zone, like I think that a lot of, I guess, musicians and athletes for a certain period of time can just kind of get into or tap into, in which time just kind of melts away and everything kind of slows down and then feels right. So I was only in band for 2 years in middle school, and I played the tri-tom, so you had the three drums in front of you, and actually no, it was the quads because there was 4.
Yeah.
And I remember maybe it was only about a month before that I actually got to play those, and I was the only one. And so I would keep the cadence for the whole band. And we did like a strawberry festival where everybody walks through the strawberry festival, and it was quite a few blocks, but I kept the cadence in between the songs that we would play. And I remember after the first two, I was like, okay, like it's good, but the drum instructor was kind of like, he was very rigid, right? And I remember me and the rest of the percussion people, we wanted to add a little oomph to it. Like, we're having all these people like lining the sides of the streets watching us play. Like, why do we want to play like boring stuff? Like, let's play some fun stuff. And so whenever we would play the songs, all right, yeah, we had to play the songs, but in the middle, in the cadences, so that way everybody could walk in step, I was like, you know what? Screw it. Like, we're playing something like catchy, whatever. And I remember I would just change up that cadence to where it was like a little bit of a remix sometimes. Sometimes I would slow it down. Sometimes I would get the cadence. And like, the rest of the band loved it. Like, I could see it in their faces. Like, they were looking at me like are you really going to do this? Like, you're going to be in so much trouble if you get off beat and just do your own thing right now. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, let's go. It's happening. And I did it. And I remember, I got in a whole bunch of trouble. But like, I remember at the end, it was so difficult because our band director was a guy, like I said, that was rigid. But all of the parents were like, that was so much fun. Like, who added all those extra little beats and those little nuggets? And he's looking at me in the corner of his eyes with like laser beams cutting my head in half. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like,
but you know
everybody loved it.
But you found something fun that, right, it changes it for you a little bit. And I would say, like, when I think back to like middle school, right? So I played saxophone. Out of all of us, I played the least amount of time. I played. It was okay. It was okay. I was not as musically inclined on the saxophone as Alex or Brother Ivan. But what we did enjoy is Ivan usually would find songs that we all enjoyed, and those were the songs that he would get like sheet music for. So, like, for instance, do you remember Functified by the Brat?
Ooh, yeah, that's way back.
Yeah, that, like dun 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 dun, and that was who did he sample the beat from? That was Isley Brothers in the Sheets, if I remember right, or Between the Sheets.
Yeah, it was sped up a little bit. Yeah.
So, if I remember right, that was a song. So, but like, Ivan would bring home sheet music. So like, he found a song that we liked, and that's what we would learn like in our free time, right? So we'd go up there and we'd play Yankee Doodle or Achy Breaky Heart, or whatever random crap that it was like play. I don't know. And then we would go home and we would play, Functified on the saxophone, right? So you find that thing that makes it fun to you, that doesn't feel so rigid, right? So I think even like, that brings up a really good point too, of like, how do you get somebody comfortable with that stuff? Like, I think it's finding the right fit in the music, right? So like, when we started playing music together, we had no idea like what we wanted to sound like, or like what the music was. It was just like, I had a guitar, I would write down some stuff, and if like a note sounded pretty to me, I was like, oh, okay, I kind of like this, and then I would write it down. And or I try and remember it, or I'd record it, and then I'd play it for Alex, and Alex would go, hey, I got this idea for a drum beat. And the funny part is, like, we all had very different like tastes in music. Like I listen to probably like of the bunch, I probably listen to like the more like mellow acoustic rock stuff, or like just really like the emo music. And then like our bassist listened to what I can only describe as like, it's not even like a genre of music. It's like grindcore, hardcore, like it's music that's almost not even music. Like, it just starts as you're like, it's a 7-second song of a guy going, and you just, it wouldn't make any sense, but that's what he enjoyed. And then like Alex at the time, I mean, you listen to everything, but you would listen to like more metal stuff, to the point of like, you would listen to like Afro beat, and then like jazz fusion, and then I'd walk into your room and you hear like, it'd be like Indian music, it'd be whatever it was that was like Alex and
dude. The percussion for Indian music is insane. Have you actually listened to it? It's so good.
Yeah. But that's my point. Like Alex has a very diverse palette, and then Alex and I grew up listening to R&B. Like I probably still to this day have like every Brian McKnight album ever made. Like this is the stuff that we grew up to.
Brian McKnight, Keith Sweat.
Exactly. Very, very
Donald
different
Jones.
from what we played. But us all kind of coming together, and we found like a sound that worked for all of us. That we're like, hey, this has some elements of like Alex can throw in some drum beats that I really liked, and then Chris could throw in like some aggressive bass, right? Or do like a heavy bass beat, and then like Danny listened to just metal at the time, and metal and like what would you call like
gospel?
Gospel?
No,
it's a totally different type of sound.
like that, like stoner, like beachy, like it's not really quite reggae. It's like the like I don't know what the correct.
I don't know what that genre would be.
The genre, but it's still like it's the like Sublime type stuff, I guess. Like Sublime, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't think like the Slightly Stupid, like that kind of stuff. So like again, very different genres that we all come together and like found our deal. Guarantee that if I learned playing guitar, because somebody sat down and he's like, "Hey man, I'm going to teach you some reggae and guitar," I'd be like, "I don't know if this fits for me." Or if Alex is like, "Hey, I found this amazing like Middle Eastern like random thing," he's like, "You got to try and play this guitar, bro." I'd be like, right? It probably wouldn't have fit.
It wouldn't have fit.
But yeah. Do you get what I mean? Like we found like that groove that fit us, and I think that's part of it too, right? I mean, it's somebody finding like that sound, that thing. It's that calypso, right? It's your calypso.
Yeah.
It's that sound.
You gotta find your tribe, right?
Exactly, right.
Like you gotta find the people and the stuff that run with you that gets it.
Yeah.
That it's going to be that welcoming kind of like environment that's going to allow you to like learn and flourish and try different random stuff that you don't know if it'll work and allow you to be bad. And then from there, like that's going to kind of remove that shyness, I guess you could say, remove that like timidness, that anxiety from you, and just allow you to kind of play more freely. And I think over time, like that can work.
Well, you know, when we first started playing, I remember when I brought in my buddy Chris because we had. So my cousin plays music. He had a band and stuff like that. So we went to go play for him. We were like, "Hey, we wrote a couple of these songs. You know, we want you to hear them." And so Alex and I drove down there. We go to Miami, and my buddy Danny brings his friend Tony. Do you remember that kid, Alex? He literally was there for like once. He played bass for us. And the first thing that like my cousin said, he's like, he's like, "You guys all sounded really good." He's like, "What was that guy there for?" He's like, was he just for moral support? Like, do you see the fourth body? You know, because it just didn't fit, right? We taught him the songs.
Yeah.
He would get up and he would play, and he was interested in learning, but it just wasn't his fit. And so I bring in my buddy Chris, who again listens to these he's in these crazy death metal bands. He has played all this random stuff, but I knew he had a very wide variety of music and a big palette of music. And I was like, "Hey, I want to play these songs. You know, this is what we're working on. I know you've been in band. Just let me know what you think." I knew, I kind of knew it was a safe space. And he hears everything. And he's like, "Wow." He's like, "I like it. This is good." He's like, "Do you guys still need a bassist?" And I'm like, "Yeah, do you want to play?" And he's like, "Oh, hell yeah." So we all met up and he tried to figure, we all met up and figured out a place and practice. And actually we're practicing because we're playing, oh my God, Alex, we're playing Outback's Christmas party or Outback's 2-year party or something like that, or for the store.
Oh, is that the pavilion?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And they were like, it was either that or it was Monica's birthday. I can't remember what it was. So we both worked it out back.
Yeah.
Also, we all worked it out. Just assume everybody on this planet has worked it out back.
In our family.
Somebody from their family worked it out back.
Someone from the family has always worked it out back at one point in time. So we were practicing for that show. We were like, oh, okay, we committed to something. We were like, we have to play in front of people. We have committed to do this. It's people that we know and work with. Oh God, we have to be ready. And thankfully, that was steadily how we figured out how much alcohol helps with the stage right.
Trial and error.
Yeah, trial and error. But it was like, but it clicked so much more, right? We found that fourth person, we found that cog, that person that like was inclusive. It just kind of fit the tribe, right? Figured out the sound, was like, hey, and he added a new layer of stuff that, because he had experience with it, I think he taught all of us a little bit of stuff, right? Even if it wasn't like, he didn't play drums, but he knew how to articulate drums better than Alex, and he would help Alex with stuff. Or he would say, hey, try this and see how this sounds. And, you know, sometimes it would sound bad, and then sometimes Alex would go, well, hey, how about if I do it this way? And it would fit, right? The point being is, it was, we all found that inclusive group. We found the right sound that we all found some sort of interest to, even though it was like not really any of our genre at the time. Like, I didn't think we knew it was like a genre. It like we ended up finding more bands after we became a band, because people would be like, oh, you kind of sound like this band but crappier, and they'd be like, oh, and then we'd go home and look up that band and be like, this band's awesome, we should try and sound like them, right? Like, But we had no clue. We would pick it up and we just played what sounded like it worked for us. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if I had to imagine like what our sound was like or how we found it, was just, I guess if everybody's musical preference was like one of the circles on a Venn diagram, it was just kind of like where all of them would overlap, and that's kind of where we landed, you know. And that's kind of where our sound kind of came from. To where, I mean, it's everything from like, you know, jazz and R&B to like death metal, or like the sound of somebody screaming over, you know, a dumpster fire or something, like, you know, oh, filling up a landfill with metal objects and screaming, to like, you know, like it was like all of these things, and we just kind of found something that, you know, we liked, and it fit us, you know, it fit us for the time. So,
well, the great part is we would take some of those elements, right? So obviously it wasn't like we weren't throwing metal objects in the landfill for recording. Although now I wish we had, because that would have been so awesome. But we would take like, you know,
at least be like an intro
like
or an outro.
It would have been so good. Now I'm like regretting so much. But we would take like elements, like I like the mellow stuff, right? So every song usually had like a little breakdown area that was just guitar, and it was kind of mellow. Literally almost every song had something like that. And then we had like a heavy build-up, because the bassist and the guitarist listened to heavier music, so they were all about that. Alex is really big into instrumental music also, and that helped. So I think that gave a lot of elements to it, right? You kind of get anything that's just no lyrics, a little bit more mellow part. Alex had a lot more liberty to like add in some drum fills, do something beforehand, do something afterwards, right? Good build-ups. And he was really good about putting good build-ups within the song, right? So within the bridge of the song or the verse, he had a lot of freedom. So I think we all kind of found that groove, what we liked. I mean, we literally had like a song that, to Alex's point, like we grooved one day, and we weren't intending to. It was just like a random guitar piece that we started playing, or somebody was playing, or somebody was playing someone. I think you and Chris started jamming drums and bass or something. And then we were like,
you're talking about like instrumental, like number 9 or whatever it is.
No, it was number 2.
In number 2.
Actually, and number 3 I think ended up that way too. We had to name them, but we didn't know what to name them, so they were just called instrumentals. But that's how we found it, right? It was like we weren't a jam band, but we found something that just kind of worked, and we're like, well, I don't know how lyrics would fit to this, and maybe we add it later, maybe we don't, right? But for right now, it's just we found something, we're in the wave, like let's just keep piling on and see what the reception is on it.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge point, is just to keep that wave whenever you can find it, right? Like, don't try and fit that wave in a box or a genre or a type, or have a future thought to that wave, or we're going to do this with it later, we're going to do that with it. Just like, I guess that's where that fun comes in, that love for playing music is just the most important, right? So like whatever it is, just get to that point wherever you can find it, and just hold on to it for as long as you can.
I think we sat and played.
Yeah.
If I remember, it was instrumental number 2. I still remember we found the song. We were in Chris's garage. We're playing. We kind of figured out this groove.
I remember that.
And we're like, we can't stop. We literally couldn't stop. And we would play for an hour. Like we'd try and play at least like an hour a couple times a week. Like whenever we were, like didn't have to work in the restaurant. And we were just like, we can't stop playing because we're not going to find this again. And then like, as soon as we stopped, we're trying to write stuff down. We're like, where was I playing this guitar piece, or how did we start it? And then of course, like when we tried to play it again, it took a little bit to find the groove again. I mean, it took a lot of practice to figure out what it was that came so naturally to us that one time. It was crazy. But it worked, right? And I think that was like, when we did that, even though I was very, very shy about playing in front of people, that was the one that I was like, I can't believe we came up with this damn thing. Bring on the drums. Like, if there were people standing behind us, that was like the one thing that I'd be like, I'm really proud that we put out this stupid song that doesn't have any words, that we had no idea what we were doing, because it just kind of fit.
Honestly, I'm kind of disappointed our whole album didn't, I guess it would be an EP, didn't like sound, that was my favorite song out of all the songs that we had, and I think it wasn't, not that it was like that much better than everything else. I think it was just the way that song made me feel, like the way we just kind of fell on it, and we were like, oh my god, this is just it just had I don't know, just the between the tone and
it's a little jazzy.
All the pieces from all the different guitars. Yeah, it was a little jazzy, a little bit rock. Like, I mean, man, I don't think we have it. Do you have the recording? I don't have any of them.
I have it somewhere. I have a really, really crappy version, I think, when we played like Wallflower Gallery before they shut down the fifth time.
Yeah. There was like a hole in the wall place to where they would have like small bands. Yeah. Well, yeah, because we didn't really have a following.
Whenever we played the Wallflower Gallery, it was like the Save the Wallflower Gallery show, where they're like, we'll book anybody if you can bring anyone who can pay for the $5 cover to get someone.
So you were the reason all these places went out of business then?
That's very
probably.
They let us play.
We wasted their time.
We waited until they were almost out of business, and they were like, yeah, that's fine. We're closing anyways. You can play through.
Yeah, we'll just bring it anyway. Who are these guys? Yeah, that's fine.
They're already defeated.
Great. I think we nailed it, guys. I'm thinking from a time perspective, like, I think it's a max of like 2 hours, and we got like 20 minutes left. So I want to make sure that you guys get your little kind of like segment at the end. But to like wrap up, we're looking like to get people out of their shyness and play music a little bit more often. It helps to have a musically inclined family, but even if you don't, the key things that we want people to take away are, you want to make it fun. You want to find a way to be able to make sure that you're enjoying your time and not associating it with positive things versus negative. You definitely want to find your tribe. So like a beginner's group or some type of welcoming community from a musical standpoint. Maybe people that are playing the same instruments as you, or singing the same style of music, or have the same interest in music. So that way you can find like people to be able to make that segue into playing music on a regular basis and being okay with your music. Easier for people to be receptive. Of course, alcohol helps, but not everybody can drink alcohol, especially like little young kids and stuff like that. So, but there's easier ways to be able to be okay with just be okay with being a little silly, getting around comfortable people. Karaoke is a good way to do it. You can play different instruments and do that. Live streaming, putting it out there, so just that way you have that option for people to be able to see it, even if they might not comment or whatever, but it'll help thicken your skin. So I feel like it's a pretty good framework for anybody that's starting out to be able to say, all right, how do I get out of my own head and at least try, or if I am playing music, like put it out there for other people to see.
Yeah.
Seem pretty good?
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Excellent. All right. So what else has been on you guys' mind? This is like co-creator segment. What's been something that you've been attacking, thinking about, want to break down, shout out? Maybe you got a business or something like that, or a new project that you're on.
Can I do my plug? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, plug it.
Okay. So one thing that I always want to talk about, because I think that it's pretty important, is I want to talk about Feeding Tampa Bay. So it's an organization, it's tied to a larger organization, which I believe is called Feeding America. But Feeding Tampa Bay is something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. And I say that because on top of growing up in a very musically involved family, I would say we are a family that likes to eat, like a lot, and like a lot. Like we all really, really like to eat. I grew up in a pretty, I'd say, more or less typical Cuban household, and I think that we grew up understanding and learning that like food is something that you show. Food is something that you provide to show people you care, right? It's something it's like showing love with food, right?
Show love, yeah.
That's exactly right. So it's I think it's a very common like island thing. I know it's definitely a very typical Latin thing, but I always grew up right. We ate good, and that's some of the best moments that I have in my life are like spending time cooking or spending time in the kitchen with family or around a dinner table, right? So I think the idea that there are people who live in our community who don't have food is insane, right? We're in the wealthiest country in the world, and we're all very fortunate to be in the situations that we're in, because I never have to worry about where my next meal is coming from. So I think the idea that people do have to worry about that, considering it's a basic necessity, right? Food, water, shelter. So anyways, organization called Feeding Tampa Bay. They provide services to the 10 counties within West Central Florida. Their focus is on a hunger-free Tampa Bay. I want to plug it. It's a great organization. Every year I try and do something at work called Cereal for Summer, which is just, getting donations for those kids who likely get their food from school for free, right? That's probably their one good or hot meal a day. So collecting cereal so they can distribute it to those kids who are no longer getting food over the summer is just, right? It's giving to your community, and it's giving somebody that basic necessity, and it's, food is showing somebody you love and care, right? So just here's my plug. It's a real simple thing. You go to the grocery store, buy an extra can, buy 2 cans, stack them up. Every single time you go to the grocery store, once a month, go do a drop off, right? It'll cost you $1 every single time you go to the store, and you are going to literally be saving somebody's life or being that hot meal for somebody, right? So it's a great organization. It's a nonprofit, feedingtampabay.org. And that's my plug.
Excellent. Alex, you got anything for us?
I have entirely too many things that are going through my head right now. I have no affiliation with anything that I'm about to mention, or any of these organizations. But probably my biggest take-home thing is to. I know this sounds real. I've been doing a little bit of soul searching lately, if that makes any sense. And
like everybody has.
Yeah. Well, not that I've had a ton of time to think. I've actually been. This is the busiest I've ever been. With work, it's absolutely insane. Just because of my job was moved to, because I work remotely now, I work from home. But now I do a lot of other things that we weren't doing pre-COVID, and then now I have to do it like online. So it's now on a digital platform. So, and I'm not super tech savvy. But all of that to say is, I know right now it's tough on a lot of people. This is kind of what's going on just generally in the United States is pretty disheartening from every aspect. Like I'm kind of on I'm on a news diet because it's starting to give me like borderline debilitating anxiety with just everything that's going on between, all the protests and COVID. People just, it seems like madness, to be honest. And kind of what I'm getting at is don't be afraid to take a step away from everything and all the noise and try to take care of yourself, or reassess your life in a way to where you really have to align what's important to you and what's in front of you. A lot of times, like social media and Facebook and Instagram, just whatever it is, like it might distract you from the things that are right in front of you that are really important. Like spending extra time with your kids or calling your parents or a couple of friends that you haven't talked to, because now everybody's just kind of like, well, most people should be at home. I'm not saying everybody is. But the friends that you're not out drinking with, like building those relationships are really important. And maintaining those things do take work. It might not take a lot of work, but it does take some work. So all that to say is don't forget about the people around you in your life that are important, because they're not always going to be there. And COVID is a perfect example of that. Of, somebody could go, you could lose a family member in a couple weeks. So, like, don't take for granted the people that are in your life. And probably the only other thing that I can think of is also do everything you can to take care of yourself. I notice right now people are not taking the best care of themselves when they're home. It's easier when you like have a routine and you go to work and you're like, oh, after work I go to the gym and blah, blah, blah. Now you don't do any of those things. And even if you can't do the same things that you were doing before, doesn't mean you can't do other things that might help get you over, like this little bump in the road, or well, big bump, hill, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Right? So, and the other thing that I'm thinking of, which a friend actually mentioned that he was doing this, is he's starting to do community service. And granted, he has time because he's like, no, I went from like a 45-hour-a-week job. He's like, he's like, realistically, I'm working like 20 hours a week and I'm watching Netflix for like 10.
Yeah.
And he's like, so now I'm doing community service. But, if you have the time and you have the energy, like local food banks, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, like any of those types of organizations to where you can kind of help guide the next generation of people. You can talk some sense into them.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Those type of things are huge. The lady just told me about a different one, because I think a lot of people often think about those that are a little bit disadvantaged or in some rough places. And then the next thought is, taking care of the kids in the next generation. But she just came across an article about pen pals for the elderly, because apparently they don't have the ability to, well, one, a lot of them might be a little bit difficult with technology. A lot of them might have the ability to meet with family and friends because of the COVID and everything that's going on. They can't be visited. So they're there by themselves. It's, there's only so much TV and Netflix, a 70, 80-year-old, that, maybe has partial dementia, whatever the case is. But just having somebody to reach out to. So, like sending them a postcard, sending them a handwritten letter, like that can mean the world to them when they haven't seen and spoken to anybody that I guess they could feel like cares about them in months now. So it's just a different avenue to kind of get out and, contribute back to the community. I think it's super helpful.
Yeah. And a lot of it is just, it's hard to maintain those relationships. Oh, go ahead.
So I don't know if you guys are familiar with an app called Nextdoor, but if you're not,
sounds familiar.
So you can download the app. It's basically like a forum for your neighborhood. So imagine like Reddit, but less hateful because it's your neighbors, right? But the point I'm getting to is there's actually a feature I saw on the app that allows you, and it says it's called a help map. And what it does is it shows anyone in your neighborhood that is offered to provide help. So you can set yourself up as like a little beacon on your Nextdoor app, and you can say what it is that you can help someone with. So if you say, hey, I grocery shop 2 days a week. If you need groceries on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I can pick up groceries for you, neighbor, if you're unable to get out. But I thought it was such a cool little thing, right? Because I live in
that is a really good idea.
Seniors.
Yeah.
So I saw that today, and I think it's a good outlet, right? It's just an option, assuming, right? Issue could be they're not great with technology, but again, cool little thing of like, we want a good way to get to know your neighbors and also be helpful. Like maybe that's a simple way to do it.
Yeah, getting the whole community involved in things like that. It makes a world of difference, especially for those who feel that they can't get out, and even for those that can get out and maybe either choose not to. Like it's just bringing people together for positive reasons rather than negative is, I think, what we really need right now. So, gentlemen, I have to say thank you. This has been awesome. I think you guys, we're getting close, but I think we've been spot on with trying to nail, what it means to get kind of out of our heads and into the music life, as well as, your bits of plug and all that kind of stuff. So thank you for your time today. I think it's been huge. As far as all of our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. You can also find all of our content using the handle @Ideaprov on all of our social medias, so Facebook and YouTube. We're on Twitter, Instagram. Follow us, reach out to us if you want to be on the show, have any new ideas, or just generally want to talk about the comment. You can also hit us up at ideaprov.live. That's our website. You can go there and kind of follow along with all the action and all the new episodes. Thank you, and until next time.